In this video, we're going to be looking at navigation for rock climbing. If you find any of the information in the videos or any of the videos on our YouTube channel useful, then it might be an idea to go to our website, rockandsun.com, and then check out the accompanying blog articles that go with most of the videos that we have on the YouTube channel. So we have several videos that we're going to watch. I'm just going to keep those running while I talk through our approach to teaching or coaching navigation for rock climbing. We're pretty much working in a sport climbing environment, but what we tend to do is specifically go to routes that have some good navigation in them. We're often choosing routes that make it a difference whether you climb them one way or not. Some routes, doesn't really matter whether you climb left a meter or two or right a meter or two. The grade might feel very, very similar, but some routes, it will make a massive difference whether you're a meter or a meter and a half left or right of where you could be. And that could make the route feel a completely different grade. May even get to the point where the route is not even possible for you to climb unless you are in the right place, depending on what grade you climb. We have a process for determining where a route goes, or for navigating on a route. And it's like a framework for decision making when you're climbing, which is all of this stuff happens when you're still. So you're on the ground or you just clip the bolt and you're standing in your clipping position. You look up to see what your destination is, and that's where you think your feet need to be in order to reach the next clip. Then what you do is you consider your 3 or 4 options on how to get there and navigate from your feet where it's less steep to get to that. There might be left, straight up, right, or maybe down and left or down and right. Once you've settled on which is the least steep way to get there, you do a risk assessment to make sure that the route that you're choosing to do is allowing the bolt to keep you safe. So the bolt that you've just clipped. And that's what we call the climbing framework. And there's a blog article that you might want to go and check out as well that you can find, of course, on our website. What I want to look at, though, with these videos is to see the difference between just staying close to the bolts or just navigating for your hands, as opposed to our approach, which is actually navigating for the feet and finding hands that go with the footholds, or at least finding hands that allow our feet to go in a direction that we think is going to be easier based on the fact that the angle of the rock will be less steep than the other options that we may have identified. So we have a climber here now, just getting to very close to pretty much the meat of the route. So you'd call this the crux, the hard part of the route. So clip the 3rd bolt here. Out left of where the climber is, it's slabby. But this is one of the reasons, I guess, that we've developed this approach for navigation, is because what we identify when we're asking people to climb these routes is they're often not going the way that we go. They're choosing to go a different way, and often that different way is harder. So much so sometimes that people really struggle or can't even get up the way that they've chosen. And then when we review the video footage that we take from the first day of a coaching week, for instance, and show them the way they've gone or how they've climbed the route, what we'll do is look at the route from the ground using a laser pen to identify an alternative option that they could have chosen. And then the climbers will often climb that a second or a third time using the new approach, and we're trying to get them to the point where they are able to feel that the climbing that we are navigating through is easier than what they were choosing to do. The discussions that we have with most of our clients bring us to the conclusion that most people aren't looking at the rock in the same way we do. So we're very much focused on, if we can go where the rock is less steep, it enables us to get more weight on the feet. it allows us to lean in over our toes or over our feet, get our hips over our feet more, and get the weight off of our arms. So if we can focus on identifying those little changes in gradient or angle on the rock and use those to navigate our way up the route, as long as that is a safe choice for us, then for us that is the solution to figuring out what the easiest way to climb the route is. So what we often see is climbers looking up a lot for their hands and moving their hands around quite a lot. And as soon as they've found the handholds, their feet will move fairly quickly to match the handholds. But what we're doing is actually the opposite. We're actually looking to see where our feet want to go, and then we're choosing hands that allow our feet to go where we've already decided. So while we're still, having already clipped or about to clip, we stay still, we read the rock, decide where we'd like our feet to go, and then we find hands that will allow our feet to go in that direction. And I think what most climbers do, and this is definitely something that will happen if you climb indoors a lot, you almost want to be navigating for the hands when you're climbing on plastic, because that's almost the way that most routes are set. You can see the handholds, and there's always going to be a coloured foothold that you can find to match the handholds. Whereas when you're climbing on rock, what you really want to do is choose where you want your feet to go so that you can have the weight off of your weaker limbs, your arms and your hands, and on your feet and your legs. So that means you have to prioritize where the feet want to go and then make sure your hands allow you to go in that direction. So when we use the laser pen to help people see the route that they could take, we'll put them back on the route. They usually go on top rope to start with, but then they'll go on either on lead or on top rope again and try and climb the route the way that we have identified using the laser pen exercise. And sometimes we'll even have them on the rock and guide where their feet want to go with the laser pen to help them avoid going the wrong way, maybe, and falling off. So this is a split screen image of a climber first having led the route, putting the drawers in, and staying to the right, close to the bolt on the crux section here that you see the climber on. And then they're going again on the left this time. The climber on the screen on the right is now moving out left. This is where we would normally advise people to go if they want to make the route easier. So that just allows the climber now to move onto the slab. There's still a safe distance in our estimation from the bolt, but they've literally gone where the rock is less steep and just done some easier climbing. And I think that way that the route pretty much is the grade, as opposed to making the route harder for themselves. So now this is Dave's a Rock and Sun instructor climbing on top rope, just demonstrating the approach that we have. And what's interesting about once you choose to go the right way, and there is no right or wrong way, of course, you can go any way you like, but of course we're employed to give people tools and information to allow them to make the climbing easier, is that if you go the right way and get off of the steep rock, or go where it's less steep and get more weight on your feet, what you also have is you have a greater amount of choices about where to place your feet. So although essentially you're able to get more weight on your legs and use your arms less, what you're also able to do is to have greater control or options of how and where you place your feet and move more efficiently, because you're not on something that's pushing you off balance so much. If you can get on something that's slabby, then you would take that option so that you can lean in, have time to think about what you're doing, but also you now can plan to take smaller steps to transfer your weight onto your feet. All those more efficient movement skills that you want to have are all going to be much easier if you're on less steep terrain. So that's the background of why we want to be climbing this way. And of course, there's all sorts of things, all sorts of questions people ask about this approach. Of course, people sometimes ask questions like, well, is it cheating? There's no such thing as cheating in sport climbing. Someone's been there with a drill, drilled a hole, put a bolt in, and what they've tried to do is make the climbing safe for you, make the route safe for you to climb. So in our book, in our estimation, it doesn't make sense to take something that should have been bolted in a way that allows you to climb it safely and then make it dangerous. So we keep it quite simple, really. The only rules that we have is if you're trying to find the easiest way, go where it's less steep. Make sure you're having fun, and don't make it any more dangerous than it should be. So, again, on this split screen here, you can see quite clearly that we've got a climber on the left side of the street going where it's less steep. We've got a climber on the right, and that rock there, or the approach from the right, was much deeper than what the climber was doing on the left. And now the climber is clearly standing quite comfortably on the feet, and they're actually going to move across to the right now, where the other climber is as well now, and stand quite comfortably. So, rather than just looking up for chalk or handholds that you can reach, you're actually planning where your feet need to go based on being able to get more weight on your legs and weight off of your arms. And often when you see someone doing this, you can see that they're more relaxed in their upper body, and they're allowing the weight of their body to settle on their feet and their legs as they're moving through. Whereas if you're really just prioritizing the hands, often you're going to be doing big movements, you're going to be hanging on your arms, and your arms get tired, and then that's when things start to maybe unravel a little bit. So the other thing that we often get asked is how this approach applies to overhanging rock. And it's the same. Even when the rock is steeply overhanging, there's still going to be some less steep rock around the options that you have. And it's about recognizing that and picking those less steep bits out so you can get your feet on them and get more weight off of your arms and your upper body. So up until now, we've been looking at routes that are sort of 6A, 6A plus, and this route here is, I think, 6B. But you'll find that even when you are on things that are sort of 7B plus up or overhanging, we can look at how there's still going to be some navigation around some of the steeper sections. It's just important just to also recognize that just because you have a way of determining where is easier or not, we have the choice to go that way or not. If we want to choose something that looks more fun or looks more challenging, there's nothing to stop us going in that direction. But what we at least want to be able to do as climbers is read the rock and know that there might be an easier option. So we're not going a harder way without realizing that. That should be a conscious decision that we're making for ourselves. So this route here is a 7B plus. So you'll see the climbers in a very similar position at the moment, and then you can see that they're kind of there at an overlap or a boulder sort of overhanging. It's kind of gently overhanging wall, and then these bulges or these steep sections. So you'll see the climber on the right pretty much going sort of straight over and maybe slightly right here, and then the climber on the left will be focused very much on trying to move away from the steepness. And what's interesting sometimes about these decisions we make, you'll see on several occasions that the climbers will be using the same hands and the same feet, or at least sharing. So at some point coming up now, you'll see that the climber on the right might have their left hand on the hold, that the climber on the left has their right hand on the hold. So, the idea of what's in and what's not and what's out and whether you're climbing the grade, it really doesn't matter that much. I mean, the more climbing you do, the more you'll get to know whether you feel like you've avoided the challenge of a particular route or not. But, the perfect route, a classic route, ideally, is one that's not contrived, that you can't really avoid the difficulties. And then it's a genuine grade, because if you're just deliberately avoiding some hard climbing to make the climb harder, then it is contrived. It's not genuinely that grade. And that's what you're going to find at the top end of the sport. If people are finding easier ways around the route will be downgraded. So, it's not really of a concern to us whether the route is the grade or not. What we're focused on is the challenge that climbing presents, which is there's a problem or a puzzle we need to solve. And logically, with most puzzles, you're trying to solve them via the easiest way possible. So that's what we do. And if it turns out to be easier than the grade stated, fine. Maybe you can always do the route again, and do it the harder way if you choose. So those are choices we have, but certainly it's definitely part of our job to help people be able to at least identify and determine what is the easier way up a route. So go where it's less steep as long as it is safe to do so. So this route here, you can see how steep it is. So we're just having a view from below, which means you can clearly see how steep the route is. And we've seen plenty of climbers go left from where the climber is now and over that roof. And I've done that just to see how it feels. And it's probably 2 grades harder than going out right where the climber is now. So again, the bolt is, you would be just as far left of the bolt if you were going left of the bolts than the climber is right of the bolts. And in fact, on this occasion, I think the climber is actually closer to the bolt, but that's by the by, really. It's just about developing the skill, the ability to read the rock and determine where it might be easier. And if it's something we can rely on, if it's a reliable method that we can choose to see, well, okay, we can see that there's a little bit of less deep rock here, a bit more vertical, and we can get our feet on that and then give ourselves more time to figure out the sequence, or at least rest or whatever, or just climb that way because our legs are working more and our arms are working less. Then we have the option or the choice of using that. So again, this is the same route but from a different angle, so we just get to see how it looks sort of more straight on, and the choice that the climber is going to make here. And like I say, it's something that we are very aware of from watching literally thousands of people climbing and recognizing that people are often going very different ways than we would go, and also from our sort of bolting route developing sort of experience, is that we're often surprised when we see someone climbing a route that we've bolted and they're climbing in a completely different way. And we've both, Days and I, both had the experience of people telling us that we've climbed a route that we bolted the wrong way because we've done it an easier way than they did it. And that seems kind of odd to us because I don't really have the approach. Certainly we don't have the approach that when we're getting onto the rock, we're trying to make the route as hard as possible. And maybe that's something you do when you go bouldering, or maybe that's something you do when you're at your local crag and you want to find a harder challenge. But in general, what we're trying to do, and historically the way rock climbing has developed, has been more a case of navigating your way up a mountain or a hill or a cliff via the easiest way. And then as you become better and more skilled, then you might take on greater challenges. But for us, the logical approach to climbing is to solve the puzzle via the easiest way possible. And if we want to go back and then make it harder for ourselves because it might be more fun, then of course we're free to do that. But certainly from a working perspective, we're really looking at trying to help people at least be able to identify the easier options that they might have.